In the first chapter of Hebrews, the writer focuses on the high position of Jesus, that he is the radiance of God's glory and the exact nature of his being. Jesus sits at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. Yet, for a time, Jesus was made a little lower than the angels, which is the same status as humanity. What is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man, that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels. While the first chapter of Hebrews focuses on Jesus' relationship with God the Creator, the second chapter of Hebrews focuses on Jesus' relationship with humanity. Since the children, that is us, have flesh and blood, he too shared in the humanity. Jesus became one of us. Jesus humbled himself, took on flesh, and became human. Both the one who makes men holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers. We were made in the image of God. Then Jesus humbled himself to become made in our image, uniting us even more closely to God. We are of the same family as God. Jesus, who is now seated at the right hand of the Creator of the universe, is not ashamed to call us his brothers and sisters. Now, Jesus did not step into humanity just to tie us more closely with God, although that is a very important step. We see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned in glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. By binding us to him as brothers and as sisters, Jesus is taking on the suffering of death for all of us. Jesus shared in all humanity so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by the fear of death. The writer of Hebrews emphasizes the suffering that was required for this process. In bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. Why is suffering fitting? Why did God deem it necessary for Jesus to suffer in order to provide our salvation from the power of death? It was fitting and necessary to suffer because we suffer. We are the ones who all our lives are held in slavery by our fear of death. We suffer from the consequences of sin and death every day. But Jesus became human and suffered death to help us, to bring us salvation. For this reason, he had to become like his brothers and sisters in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Jesus became human and suffered in order to blaze a trail for us from suffering through death and into glory. Until Jesus, death was the end for us. But Jesus died and was not bound by the power of death as we are. Jesus died and conquered death and was raised from the dead and was exalted and glorified. Jesus created a new path for humanity, the path of salvation. And because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Jesus has been where we are. Jesus suffered. Jesus has been tempted. Jesus has experienced the consequences of brokenness and of sin. And yet Jesus remained faithful, and he was able to overcome, and now he sits in glory. Jesus wants to bring us into that glory. When we are suffering, when we are being tempted, when we are experiencing the brokenness of sin, Jesus says to us, I have been there too. I have suffered alongside of you. And look where I am now. I knew suffering, and now I know glory. Let me help you down that path too. Let me help you in your suffering so that you might experience my glory. Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, the apostle and high priest whom we confess. Jesus became human and is happily called our brother. Jesus, our brother, suffered death, overcame death, and was brought to glory. Jesus, our brother, is calling us to that same glory. Therefore, we should fix our thoughts upon Jesus. Jesus has completed the path from suffering to glory for us, and now Jesus wants to walk that path with us so that we, his brothers and his sisters, may complete it too. But this requires for us to fix our thoughts upon Jesus. We cannot move along the path of salvation by ourselves. Without Jesus, death still holds power over us. Jesus is the one who has moved through death to life and the glory of God. In Jesus, death holds no more power over us. So therefore, fix your thoughts on Jesus. Cry out to him from your sufferings. Cry out to him from your temptations. Cry out to him from your fears. Cry out to him from your brokenness. Jesus has lived the suffering and temptations and fear and brokenness that you live. Jesus has lived it, and he has overcome it, and he has blazed a trail from suffering into glory, and he wants to bring you to glory with him.